So it's number 14, but on slide 1 from our booklet, this guy. So n is greater than or equal to. So looking at your answer choices right off the gate, best thing I can tell you is try to get rid of some answers, especially if you have like test anxiety or any of that good stuff. Multiple choice, there is always, well, usually one that's just super bad. So because of that equal to right there, we know that A cannot be it because that is an open circle, right? That can't have an equal to marks. It has to be a solid circle once there's an equal to. This is n is greater than. So what I've told some students along the way, and it sort of just depends on what makes sense, is to choose test points. I like to choose 0 because it's a nice neutral number in this case. So is 0 greater than or equal to 2? You tell me. Is 0 greater than or equal to 2? And you can type it in the chat box if you don't want to talk to me. It's less than, right? So then anything that has 0 colored in, which would be B, because that's in that line, is now not an answer. So these two are both. Now we just have to decide, is it going up or is it going down? So let's try 4, positive 4. Is 4 greater than or equal to 2? Yes, right? So that's a good one. So our answer should be D. But again, we'll try again on C. Let's see, negative 4. Is that greater than or equal to 2? Owing someone $4 is not better than having $2 in your pocket. So that negative versus positive. Negative $4 is not better for most people than having 2. So that's why that answer is D. That one's real basic. That's not no tricks or trades or anything crazy going on in that one. So if we slide over to slide 2, so this one again, there's no solving. It's pretty basic, except we have a problem. That x is not by itself. That negative, how would I get that negative? Like if this wasn't an inequality, it was just a regular equation. How would I get the negative off the x? And if I don't know his answer, I'm going to turn it into this. Don't forget that that negative in front of the x is like there's a negative 1 out here. Okay, so let's see. If I did 2x equals 4, and I'm just making up a different one, how would you get that 2 off of that x? Yes, because 2 times x and the inverse would be division, right? Okay, so this is not our problem, but we have a negative, imaginary negative 1 in front of it. So we're going to divide by that negative 1. Now, if it was an equal to, that would be fine. We would just boogie and keep going. But the golden rule of inequalities says that when I divide or multiply by a negative number, only if this number on the bottom, or if you multiply by a negative, then you're going to flip your sign. So instead of it being less than or equal to, it's now going to be greater than or equal to. Now we have an equal to, so that means we can get rid of these two answers because they have open circles. Open circles are no good. And honestly, as long as you held on to your negatives here correctly, because a positive 1 divided by a negative 1, and this is definitely, if this showed up on your EOC, 1, it would be a godsend. 2, it is definitely going to be inactive. So you have to remember positive and negative. If you divide or multiply, it's going to give you that negative out. So A is off the chopping block now too. So we have a negative 1 as our answer. Solid circle because of the equal to. X is greater than. So greater than negative 1 would be all the numbers to the right. The biggest misconception is remembering to flip the sign. So golden rule of inequalities. If you multiply or divide, yeah. Because when you really start solving, you realize like it happens more than you would expect when you start moving things across the equal marks. Because obviously you get to choose which way you want to go with it, and sometimes if a lot of students force the variable to the left side, you end up with negatives, and you're gonna have to divide by negative again. Multiply or divide by negative, flip the sign. So just like the last one, number 16 here on slide 3, that negative r is a problem. We're going to divide both sides by negative. Divide by negative is golden rule because we have to flip our sign. We have a r now, it's positive, and we flipped our sign. Rather than it being less than or equal to, it's now greater than or equal to. Negative and negative give us a positive 4. Again, we can get rid of a because that's that open circle, and we want it to be a closed circle. And we want to be greater than 4, which means we're going to have a solid circle at 4, which C's out because we have that negative. And we want to go greater than, which is going to be to the right. So our answer again for that one would be number 16. In this case, would be D. Let's see. So how did you feel about number 17, the one on slide 4? Does that make some some sense? Okay. No, I just don't want to over talk. I'll talk through all of them if you, I mean, I don't mind. So we know it's a solid circle. So B and D is gone because there's no equal to's. And like I said, it's kind of like think of equal to as a brick. So that means it's happening. Definitely a brick, not an open circle like a chain link fence, because that's what I think about when I think about open circles versus solid circles. It'll make more sense when we do linear next week or later in the week. But solid brick house, solid house. So that means there has to be that square at the bottom, the brick line. So B and D are out. We have a -1, so that gets C out. So this one wasn't even really that tough if we know solid circle means there has to be an equal to. So if we come over to 5, there's nothing there. I got excited. Let's go to 6. So this is just like the last one, except that now there's a number in front of K instead of just a negative sign. How would I get that -11 off of that K? Remember, this is a -11 times K. Yep, so we're going to divide by -11 because that's the inverse of multiplication. Remember, this is -11 times K, and we need to undo multiplication, so we're going to divide. In this case, we divided by a negative, so that's when little like sirens should go off in your head. Divide or multiply by a negative, we have to flip the sign. So now it's K, flip the sign, is greater than whatever 198 divided by -11 is. It looks like it's probably going to be 18, but I don't want to do that in my head. Hold on. Sorry, my calculator's taking a moment. And that is going to give us, it's a positive and a negative. So is my 18 going to be positive or negative? Yes, ma'am. Positive, negative division or multiplication, you come out with a negative. So now we can get rid of, none of them are solid circles, so we can't get rid of any of those. The whole number up here, where we're all the way out in this, not even really sure where they thought it would be 187. Oh, if you subtracted 11 would be where you would get there. That's not going to work. You've got some -18s, which is perfect. Again, back to that 87, not going to work. That means you didn't understand that the inverse of multiplication was division. Instead, you just subtracted the 11 from both sides. We have an open circle, and it says K is greater than. So again, that's going to be a shade to the right. So our answer is C. All right, so number 7, slide 7, number 21. I'm going to change this to an X just because my B's, even when I'm in person writing on a board, look like 6s. So I'm changing it to an X just so you can track my writing. Amelia, how you feeling, dear? You getting some misconceptions straightened out? You know, I talk to me. You can type in the chat box. So just making sure you're with us. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so now we have to solve this 2-step equation. 6x is our stinky kid. What are we going to move first? Yes, ma'am, we are going to move the 10 first. How are we going to move it? Yes, ma'am, we're going to add it because that's the opposite of that subtraction or opposite of negative. So now that becomes 0 on that side. We get rid of it, which is perfect because we're trying to get the 6x by itself. Or we're trying to get x by itself. I have $8 and I gain $10, which means I have $18. 6x we just talked about is multiplication. That's 6 times x. And then what are we going to do to undo 6 times x? What's the inverse? Yep. And what are we going to divide by? Good, because we got to get it off the x. Another misconception I watch a lot of students do is they divide by 18. And that's a positive 6, so our symbol stays the same. 18 divided by 6 is going to give us that 3. We have an open circle. That doesn't help us get rid of any of our multiple choice, but we're up in the 40s over here. That's a terrible idea. So we'll get rid of A. And we have a B, x is a positive 3, or B in this case, because that's the variable they use, it is greater than a positive 3. There's our inequality, and it's to the right, which is perfect. So that's why that answer is correct for 21. Number 8. Now this puppy, slide 8, this puppy's a mess. We're going to do this one and probably run out of time because this one might take a minute, a little longer than the other ones. So first thing first, you want to clean up. So this is our great divide. You want to look at the left and you want to look at the right and get it as simplified as possible. So all whole numbers together and all variables together. On the left side, there's two variables. We're combining them. We're just cleaning up, as I'd like to say. So there's no inverse operations necessary. We're just going to like simplify. So if I have $1 and I have $6, make sure we don't lose the negative that's attached to the 4. That means I have $7. Now we're down to variables and just constants, one of each on both sides. So we need to get our variables on one side and our whole numbers on the other side. Your work may or may not match mine, because there's different ways to go about this. I like to avoid a negative on a variable. Whichever direction that means, that's the way I go. But some students like to always have the variable on the left because then the inequality points in the direction in which you are shading. Whichever works better for you. I would move my 6m. I'm going to subtract it because that's the opposite of that addition. So my 6m's are gone. And now I'm looking at a -4 plus. I had 7. I lost 6, means I have 1. And then 4. So close to by itself. But what's over here on that side that needs to move? Still. Yep, the -4 over here, right? And how would I move a -4? What's the opposite or inverse of -4 or -4? Yes, ma'am. So we're going to add 4. And we got to add 4 to this side as well. Which means I now have 1m, or m is greater than or equal to, I had 4, I added 4, is 8. So we can get rid of all these 37s because those are crazy talk. Our answer at this point has to be C because that's our positive 8. I'm not really sure. I'm going to assume some of these other answers is if they moved it in different order from left to right. But so that's why solid circle, because it's equal to, and then shaded to the right because, again, m is greater than. A lot of these are greater than. It's pretty wild. And then those are all the examples I have for you.